What is going on, everyone? Today I'm going to be giving you a spoiler-free review for Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, I believe was the title. I honestly forgot the title for a second in my head. I had to think about it. This movie, I have a lot of thoughts. There's a lot of pros, there's a lot of cons. I will be doing a ranking of every single Godzilla and Kong movie ever. Like, I'm talking all like 40 plus of them. I went through and watched them over the past few months. There's a couple I had to leave out just because they were unavailable in my country, but for the most part, 99% of the Godzilla and Kong movies I watched. And I'm going to be doing a ranking video, hopefully within the next few days. It'll probably take me some time to put it together, so definitely, hold off on that for a little bit. I'm not going to rush it out. I want to actually put some decent work into it. But today, we're just going to do a review of Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. So starting off with the positives, I do think the monster battles were pretty great here. I don't think the MonsterVerse has ever been bad in that aspect. I think their monster battles have always looked really good. And to be honest, I think they look better than anything we've ever seen within any Godzilla movie, including the Japanese ones, because a lot of the prior Japanese films, they obviously were a bit older and they used suits instead of CGI. Now that looks fine. It looked fun and it was cool and interesting, but it doesn't have, I feel like, the same level of freedom, I guess, that the next generation of CGI is able to do. I would honestly love for a new Japanese Godzilla film that does include other monsters, because their recent Godzilla films have been fantastic. I mean, Godzilla Minus One was amazing, but there was no monster fighting. It was just Godzilla himself, and that wasn't really a problem. The movie was still fantastic. But if I wanted to see a movie specifically with monsters fighting, we haven't had that from Japan since, I want to say, 2004. It's been a while. It's been a long time. So I would love to see the new technology that they have nowadays within a Japanese Godzilla film. But for the American films, for the MonsterVerse, I haven't had a problem with any of them in terms of that. I think they all look very fantastic. This one is the same thing. The CGI is very great. There was never a point where I felt like the CGI wasn't up to par with the standards that I felt like it should be. It always looked fantastic. The scenery always looked fantastic. It was all fantastic. Like, that's pretty much simple as that. Like, there's really no places where I was like, oh, they could have done that practical. No, it all looked fantastic. There was not a single bit of CGI here that looked poor. It looks amazing, especially the last like 30 minutes or so where there's a lot more monster action. Oh, it's so good. You have Kong. I'm not going to spoil the specific fight sequences, but just, you've seen him from the trailer. Trust me, it's that, but times 10. And they're pretty great. I do think Kong has a lot more to do in this than Godzilla does, which honestly, I'm like iffy on that, because I honestly wanted to see more of Godzilla here. I wanted to be more Godzilla centric, but this really did feel like Kong's movie more than anything. And it makes sense. They even have, the son of Kong here, and the main villain is more connected to Kong. So Godzilla is kind of just there as a helper almost. And I don't know, he's cool. I love watching Godzilla, obviously, but I would honestly like a Godzilla and Kong movie where Godzilla has more of a focus, because I felt like Kong was main focus. But the actual focus on Kong was fantastic. Like, everything with him, he was the highlight of this movie. Everything, especially with his son too, which I wasn't too sure if that actually was his son. They never really specify it. It was just kind of like, oh, there's this kid here, this younger ape. Is it his or is it not? Like, I don't know if they ever specified that. Maybe I missed that. Maybe I zoned out when they said it, but I honestly don't remember. So let me know in the comments if it actually is his son or not, or if it's just happens to be a smaller ape. But it's his son now, essentially. I mean, he basically is going to be taking care of that little ape. I do love how the movie gets to the point. Like, it's not spending too much time on different storylines. Like, it's just kind of, it has a very contained story. It doesn't spend time building up future movies, for example, which I think is good. I don't think it should be spending time doing that. And I don't think most of the MonsterVerse movies ever really did that. But in general, that's a problem with a lot of movies nowadays, where they spend time, franchise movies specifically, where they spend a lot of time building up other things. They don't do any of that. Everything here is contained to this one movie. In a lot of ways, it does feel like a classic Japanese Godzilla film, like one you would see, like, I don't know, like something like Destroy All Monsters, like something like that, where it's just like an all-out brawl with a bunch of different types of monsters, but it's very contained to itself. It doesn't feel like you have to watch anything afterwards, or you don't really have to watch anything before either. I mean, yeah, sure, the context of Godzilla versus Kong is good, but you don't need it. That's kind of the point, that you don't need that context. In terms of the characters, there's only a couple characters I really liked. I think Trapper was cool. He was a fun character. He had a lot of funny lines. Probably the only funny points of the movie was him. And I did like I honestly don't remember their names, because they're not the best characters ever, if I'm going to be honest. But there's a side story with the little girl where she's kind of getting connected to this culture that they find in here, because it is a culture she comes from, and her mother's kind of like worried of whether or not she's going to want to stay with them. And there's a really emotional moment with that towards the end of the movie that I really loved, and honestly almost brought a tear to my eye, which doesn't usually happen in a Godzilla movie. I don't think I've ever cried in a Godzilla movie except for Godzilla Minus One. So I was shocked. But yeah, there was a good emotional moment and it actually did pretty cool stuff with that. But they don't do much more than that with that storyline, so I guess it wasn't like that great of a thing, but it was cool for what it was. And then we got to get to the negatives, because there actually are a couple of negatives here, and some of this is consistent with some of the other MonsterVerse movies, but some of it's not so much. So first of all, I don't really like Bernie's character. That's Brian Tyree Henry. He's a great actor. He's a fantastic actor. I love everything, you know, every project I've seen him in, he's always does a great job acting wise. But for some reason, this character, they just gave him the most annoying dialogue imaginable. And I think it's because he was meant to be a comedic relief, right? That was his whole purpose in the movie. Really, it was most of the purpose. He could have taken him out of the movie and it wouldn't have made a difference, right? That really wouldn't have, in a significant manner. Like, sure, there were certain things that he was able to find out and certain things he was able to solve, but like him himself, he doesn't really feel like he needs to be there, and yet he is one of the main characters. And I think the problem with this character is that they kept throwing in a lot of forced humor with him. There's a couple of forced humor moments in this movie, but it's mainly revolves around him. He is the comedic relief, and that's fine. Like, I don't mind some humor, but they don't put it into the movie in an organic way. It does feel like that MCU type humor that a lot of people have a problem with. It's here, and yeah, there was once or twice I laughed, but majority of the time it just was a flat line that just didn't make me even chuckle, and it kind of almost ruined the moment of the movie as well. And they do that a lot, and I was just kind of like, all right, come on, like, we don't need to do this every couple minutes. We can stop it, you know. The dialogue was very exposition heavy, probably some of the worst exposition dumping I've seen in a movie in a while. Like, there's straight up scenes where the characters are just kind of like staring into open space, and they're just saying exactly what's happening in the plot right now, exactly what's going on, exactly what is, you know, what they want to happen, like in the most inorganic way possible. Like, I think exposition dumping is fine as long as it's delivered in an organic way. It doesn't really feel like they're exposition dumping at that point, but this was not that. This was not delivered organically. It felt like characters who were reading the wrong lines. Like, they weren't reading their own lines of dialogue, rather they were reading the lines of like what's happening in the movie right now. Like, I don't know what you'd call that, but that part of the script where you're not supposed to actually read it, because that's what it sounded like sometimes. And I'm like, I don't think people don't really talk like that, but it wasn't the biggest problem, because honestly, they do that in some of these movies too, but I just wasn't a fan of it. The opening half of the movie honestly was a bit slow, and I mean, yeah, we're here for the monster action, and like I said, the last half of the movie had a great monster action. I loved it, but if your story is going to be lackluster, which it kind of was in my opinion, at least throw in some more monster action in the first half of the film, because that was lacking in monster action. Like, there wasn't much. At least I felt like Godzilla vs. Kong, which I don't really think had as many story problems. I feel like the story was definitely better there. It at least found a way to put a lot of monster action scenes, even, you know, before the second half of the movie. There was still stuff in the beginning and the opening parts, and there was some stuff here, sure, minor parts, but it was, again, nothing that was enough to really like latch me onto the screen for a longer period of time. You know, I think, like I said, the end sequences, that was grabbing me, that made me really interested. But a lot of the first half was just these characters who I don't think are that great at characters, just kind of going around trying to solve this mystery, exploring, what do they call it? Middle Earth? The core of the Earth? Whatever they call the middle of the Earth area, which is a really cool looking place, by the way. And the thing is, I'm seeing a lot of people online saying like, oh, like, you shouldn't complain about the story in this movie because it's not what the movie's purpose is. It's not trying to have a good story. It's just trying to be a fun, goofy action movie with monsters. And I don't really particularly agree with that. Like, if the movie actually was that all the way through, then that's different. But it really wasn't. There was a large focus on these characters and the story. So if that aspect of the movie isn't, in my opinion, the best it could be, then it's gonna have to, you know, I'm gonna have to take off points for the movie. I'm just gonna have to. That's just how it is. You can have a goofy movie with, you know, crazy action sequences, crazy monster stuff, have it be very unserious, while still having good characters and a good story. You could, or you could just throw out the characters and just put more monster action. I don't know, like, you know, there's definitely better ways of going about it, but because a large portion of the movie did focus on stuff that I personally didn't think was that great, it's gonna have to lower the film a little bit. And yeah, it makes this my least favorite of the MonsterVerse films, but it's not bad. Like, I'm not in any way saying this movie's bad. I think it is a good time. I do enjoy it. I actually would say it's a good movie. It's just my least favorite of the MonsterVerse so far. So for a rating, I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10, which isn't too low. That's how you know the MonsterVerse, in my opinion, is really damn good. There's been 5 so far, and I think they're all solid. You know, this is just the weakest one. It's just the one that I feel like has the most problems with its story, with its dialogue, with its characters. But hopefully they'll do more in the future. I don't know if they have more planned. I'm really hoping for, in my opinion, I think the best thing they could do for the next movie, literally title it Godzilla x Kong, destroy all monsters, just like the movie Destroy All Monsters. I think that would be really cool, and you can like, it's a good way to call back to that movie and have it be a movie where like all of the monsters are in it, whether it's monsters coming back to life or monsters maybe not come back to life, but maybe like, you know, different generations of monsters we've already seen, and you can bring in new monsters that we haven't seen in the MonsterVerse yet. A bunch of things they can do. I think that'd be really cool, because at this point you got to go all for it, you know what I mean? You just got to go all for it, and I think that would be a cool direction for them to go. But I still enjoyed this movie, and I think it is definitely worth watching if you are a fan of Godzilla and King Kong. So yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. I will see you guys all in my next one. Peace out.